Heya! So this is just a quick beginning of this video to let you know that the book we are now reading for book club is The Color Purple, which luckily, because it's so, present everywhere, I managed to get that from the library, so I'm gonna go pick that up. And yeah, we're reading it for Black History Month. I will not be uploading this video anywhere near the time of Black History Month, but that's what it is for. So yeah, I've seen a movie, so it's gonna be interesting to read the book. I have a feeling it's quite a thin book, and I have a feeling it's gonna be quick to read, which I hope, because my book club is coming up soon. I was reading another book, so yes, let's hope I can read it quickly. Right, reviewing The Color Purple. This is obviously quite a well-known book, largely due to the movie. It also won the Pulitzer Prize when it was originally released, and I was very I started reading this book quite late, and then I was like, oh, it doesn't matter if I don't finish it, because I've seen the book, I've seen the film. But I did actually manage to finish it because it's quite short, and actually because it's done in letters. If you've seen the film, you'll notice. There's lots of places where there's half a page missing, so in fact the book is even shorter than this. What are my thoughts? This book is so much better than the movie. So first of all, I have to say that this book has anything you can think of as a trigger warning will probably apply to this book. It's got racism, domestic violence, sexual assault, rape, killing, lynching, everything is in this book, which the book is basically about a young black woman called Silly, who grows up in very much the rural South, in between two wars, and basically all the things that she goes through, the trauma she goes through. Her father isn't a very good man. He sells her to another man, basically, for her to be his wife. That relationship is also incredibly difficult. He already has children. The book is written in letter form, so she writes letters to God, as well as her sister, Nettie. Her and her sister are incredibly close. It's basically about her just writing letters to God or to Nettie about her life, the things she's going through. I do have quite a few thingies, but I'm gonna read from the book because it's a black woman in the South, in the last century, and I feel like that's not appropriate for me to read, but I will talk about the things that she raises, just because I think it's quite important. So let me just kind of start and see. Celie goes through a lot. She obviously, this is gonna have to be a spoiler section, because I have to talk about the things that Celie goes through. So if you wanna just skip ahead, feel free. I'll put a time here. But let me talk a little bit about Celie. 3, 2, 1. So Celie goes through a lot. She's raped by her father, who later turns out to be her stepfather. Bears some of his children, which he sells or possibly kills. But it comes out later that he basically gave them away. And she's raped by her new husband. she has to take care of his children, who don't really want her as their mother. They have a trauma themselves of seeing their mother die, because her mother was killed by her boyfriend. They don't listen to her, and she herself is so young, and she's supposed to be a mother to these young children. It's basically about her navigating that, them growing up, and them actually meeting a woman called Chuck Avery, I believe. And she basically falls in love with Chuck. She is attracted to women, not men. Unsurprisingly, considering that men have never ever treated her well. And Chuck and her almost they do have a relationship. And they love each other. But Chuck is also in love with Celie's husband. It's a very interesting arrangement, because as the book goes on, it becomes quite clear that Mr. is obviously extremely resentful of the fact that he could never marry Chuck because his father wouldn't let him, and he's kind of letting that out on Celie and on his children. And Celie eventually leaves him and runs away with Chuck Avery, and builds her own new life. And she basically then eventually inherited the house from her mother when she died, and goes back, and her sister Nettie, who had left the house, their family house, and went to seek. It's very complicated, just realized. But she then went to seek work and living arrangements with the pastor who had taken in Celie's children. To then, and they did, and she never told them the truth about who she was. And they took her in, and they took her with them to Africa because they were missionaries, and she's growing up in Africa. And then you get some letters from Nettie to Celie, talking about living in Africa and living as a missionary, and then eventually telling the truth about who she is, because she resembles the children so much as well. And then eventually making the journey to return to America, and then by the end they are all reunited, and it's really beautiful. But this is actually a quote from quite early in the book, after one of the children, Harpo, grew up, and he has a wife called Sophia. If you've seen the movie or if you've read the book, you will know Sophia is a badass, and she's amazing. And she basically won't put up with people abusing her or beating her or things like that. And this is about Celie talking to Harpo, and Harpo asking her what he should do about Sophia, because Sophia is so strong of will and she won't do what Harpo wants her to do, and she basically says beat her, which is incredible, because you're like, but you've gone through it. But I liked it because it kind of shows how broken Celie was by all of this, and how she saw it almost as normal, and she basically said beat her because she could feel Sophia feeling sorry for Celie, and Celie didn't like that, so that's why she said that. So it's so incredibly beautifully intricate, that emotion that caused her to say beat her. It's just, it's beautiful. There's also a bit where Nettie's the people that took Nettie in, which is a pastor and his wife, and they're in Africa, and the wife is dying, and she knows that the children are hers, obviously, and she basically thinks that Nettie is the mother of the children, but she's not, and the way that she treats the children, because she's realizing that there's something going on and she doesn't quite know what is going on, and she basically just can't have the children near her because of the way she feels as she's dying, so it's very sad. So the book talks about God in such a beautiful way to me. So I'm pagan. So I'm not into the Christian God. But this book deals a lot with God and believing in God. And Celie, to a large part, believes that God is kind of with her on her path. Even though obviously she's going through a lot of hard times. But her and Chuck discuss God, and Chuck basically says that she thinks that God isn't the Jesus Christ on the cross that people pray to in a church, but instead God is just everything. He's inside you. He's inside everybody. He's around. He's in everything that surrounds you. And she calls God id rather than he or she. She says he's just an it, and he doesn't look like anything. He's not a picture show. You just feel him when he's with you, and I thought that was really, really beautiful to kind of see God as something that's just surrounds you and is with you at all times, and not necessarily a face or a person that you can nail your prayers to. I really, really enjoyed that. And then there's this beautiful scene. Again, I can't read it. Wouldn't be right. But it's this beautiful scene where Celie finally... What I love about this book is because it has such character building for Celie, who goes from this very beaten woman and broken woman into, through her relationship with Chuck, finding strength and finding herself. And then her standing up to standing up to Harpo and being like, I'm leaving, I'm going with Chuck. And he's like, you're not going. And she's like, and she calls him all sorts of things. She calls him a low-down dog. And she says that his dead body is just the welcome mat she needs as she enters creation. And he's basically just like, what? Like, she is stone cold, and it's such a beautiful scene. And it's amazing. You read it and you're like, yeah, Celie. And then Nettie's parts are so interesting because they talk a lot about living in this very, very remote community with a group of people called Olinka, and how they are impacted by basically colonization, and how originally they lived as people, and how they have like their own gods, their own religious system, and they're obviously there as Christian missionaries, but and what they take on and what they don't take on, how they have their own way of living and feeling God in themselves. And then it's about the fact that basically Western forces came into Africa to use them for resources, especially during the wars, and how you could kind of see it all over. And like they meet this woman who is a white woman missionary who does incredible work. But she basically met 2 young black girls and she educated them. But then, so she herself was like, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to like become a wife. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I want to live my own life. But then she meets these 2 young black girls. She educates them and sends them off to England to get married. And you're sort of like, but you yourself didn't want that. So why are you sending other people to the fate that you yourself didn't want for yourself? It's very interesting. And how they became really happy as mothers and things. And you're like, yeah, but that's exactly the life you didn't want for yourself. And how Nettie talks a lot about her. She's basically very smart. And she was always interested, and she learns more, especially as she joins the pastor and his wife. She really educates herself and finds out things like the fact that the Indians, Native Americans, that lived in Georgia were forced to leave. And then how a lot of Native Americans pretended to be black and then merged with black people. I found that very interesting. And I want to know more about this, and how a lot of the traits that people think are coming from white people actually come from this Native American influence. I feel like I want to read more. I want to find out if there's a book to read more about that. But she basically finds out things like that, and like how the Bible also mentions a lot of black people and things like that. And then it also talks a lot, like the bits with Nettie, personally I found less interesting because I don't know, the bits with Cedar were a bit more impactful, and it was almost like the bits with Nettie were so far removed, and she was in such a different environment that it was sometimes quite hard to get into it. But some of those bits were really interesting as far as understanding how colonization and racism had also affected African countries, and how at one point they were at an event and a black woman is like talking about having medals for like her services, and then another white man talks to her and says, yeah, but this guy, I gave you this medal, he cut the hands of the workers who did not fulfill their rubber quota, and you should disregard this medal because it's like a symbol of colonization, literally, and of the brutalization of your people. So that was really interesting. And then there was also a bit about Samuel thinking about the story and how the Olinka cried against a lot of the teachings that they bring as Christian missionaries. And Nettie going, well, they never asked us to come, so you can't be angry with them for not wanting you there because they didn't ask you to come. You just kind of came there and said that you know better, which obviously is kind of at the bottom of a lot of the missionary work. The fact that they think they know better and they go to educate people about their own belief systems when those people usually have their own belief systems. And who's to say that their belief system is wrong, right? And how basically the land of the Olinka was taken by white people. They didn't pay for it, it was just taken. That's my land now. And then the Olinka had to work so they could pay rent to live on the land that they had lived on all of their lives for thousands of years. and that was really interesting to me about Nettie's stories, the bits where you could understand more about how colonization has actually really affected a lot of very remote African villages. Let's see. Yeah. Oh yeah. The whole book is sort of like a journey into like empowering Black women. It's very beautiful. And Sophia, who, as I mentioned, is this very strong, badass woman. She actually spent some time in jail because she's such a proud woman. She basically spoke down to the mayor, and she got arrested for it and beaten up for it. Then had to go and work for the family of the mayor, raising their children. And there's this beautiful scene where that child that she raised comes to her with her own child, and it's like, oh my god, isn't he adorable? Don't you love him? And it's quite clear that this woman, is Miss Eleanor Jane, is so invested in Sophia, and she kind of also states that she like, her husband is always off. She doesn't have any other family. She doesn't really get on with her father. And it's almost like Sophia is all she has, but Sophia cannot ever love her because she will always be a symbol of oppression. And when she then asks, like, don't you love my child? Sophia goes, no, I don't love him. And I can't ever love him because of what he symbolizes, because he's gonna grow up to be my oppressor. And it's so beautiful. So yeah, those are all the quotes I had. But the book, like, and I think I can go back. It's a beautiful, beautiful book about Celie developing as a woman, but also the other characters developing. The characters in the book are so well developed, which is crazy because you only get to know them from Celie talking about them, but you still very much know who Chuck is. You know who Mister is. You know who Harper is, who Sophia is. You get such well-known characters, and I think my problem was that I didn't really fully get that from the Nettie section of the book, where Nettie would write letters back to Celie about her life, because it always felt like it was kind of samey. So overall, I would rate this book a 4. It was a great book, and I love the book a lot more than the movie. So you got the bit, obviously, beginning where there's all the trauma and everything horrible happens. But then you got the story of Celie growing up and becoming her own much stronger woman through the love of Chuck, through Sophia, through, Harpo. And I got very emotional when I was reading the end of the book, because it's also like full of forgiveness. And let me find what I wrote. Where is it? It's just such a beautiful, like, I love the way God is treated in it, and the way it kind of discusses the difficulty between Black people very much being like brought into this Christianity and taught about Christianity. And there was actually a foreword of the author talking about like Black people basically being indoctrinated into Christianity. and how interesting that is, but how they also took it on and how they used it as a tool to also help themselves. But I love the way God was discussed in it. Obviously, I think it's very interesting that there's obviously a relationship between Chuck, a romantic relationship and sexual relationship between Chuck and Celie. But there was also something incredible about the power of the spirit and about redemption. There's a beautiful scene at the end where Mr. and Celie, Mr. who has done so much wrong to Celie, but she's kind of gone beyond that and she's grown out of that, and Mr. realizing that it all came from his own hate and his own like feelings of like having not been able to do what he wanted to do, and his feelings of like rejection and you know, hate and stuff, and how he put that on Celie and on his children, and it ate him from the inside. And there's a beautiful scene where they're almost friends, basically, because you can redeem yourself. And I think the movie didn't go into that at all. I'm like from about halfway through the book, I was like, I don't remember any of this from the movie. And I was talking to Michael about it. He was like, yeah, it was like 10 minutes at the end of the movie. So it's like half of the book is Celie basically growing beyond Mr. setting up on her own, growing as a woman, and I think that is the story of the book, is the power of Black women and the strength of Black women and the things they go through and the things that make them tougher and the trauma they go through, and how that is all beautiful and how we all have the ability to change, the ability to redeem ourselves. And I don't think that came out in the movie at all. The movies I found the trauma porn. So read the book, it's much better. And like I said, I really enjoyed it. 4 stars out of 5. And I'm really glad I read it. Color Purple.